Once upon a time, a girl with moonlight in her eyes.
My mother was born Harriet Martha Ruskowski in Buffalo, New York on September 16th, 1914.
I was christened Harriet. Translated into Polish, it was Władza. And I hated Harriet, so I went by my middle name, Martha. My mother and father both emigrated from Poland separately.
This is 1920, so Mom would be 6 years old.
I have a very vivid memory of myself in kindergarten. My father would hoist me up on his shoulders and take me to school. And I remember when we were skipping around the room, I couldn't skip. I sort of galloped like a pony. A teenager, we used to talk a lot. We used to go to the movies a lot. Movies were 10 cents.
Here's my mom when she first met my father. They met while they were taking a course at a college in New York State and fell in love. They eloped, but then had a formal wedding photograph taken.
In 1937, I wore a russet velvet dress. And my firstborn, Eric, was born the following May.
So that's Eric, Martha, Frank, Dad, Mom, George, baby Laura, and Kathy.
I was home for 20 years, and then because the kids were growing up and they all wanted to go to college, I went back to teaching. I'm glad for my family. I'm glad that I'm with grandchildren whom I love, and they're around me.
I hope this gives you a better understanding of what my mom was like. A strong, lovely, thoughtful person. And really, Mom was a great teacher. With all these tomatoes in canning jars, it seems like the perfect time to introduce my mother. This is Mom, Martha Senior, Big Martha, and I'm really happy she's here to teach you how she cans tomatoes. First, bring your tomatoes in from the garden or from the farm stand, wash them, and get your jars ready. Mom, what are you doing now?
Scalding the tomatoes. These are ripe, so they're less than a minute to facilitate peeling them.
Okay, so that makes you able to take the skin off really quickly.
Just cut away the core of the tomato.
So once my mother does the skinning of the tomatoes, I like to cut the tomato crosswise, and then I'll take my fingertip and just pull out all the seeds and all that pulp. And I can also squeeze the tomatoes cut side down so that you're left with a pretty seedless flesh. I'm doing the seeding right into a strainer, a steel strainer. Make sure it's stainless steel, not tin. You want non-corrosive surfaces when you're working with an acid vegetable like tomatoes. Maybe when you just finish those, Mother, we'll start the actual process of canning.
Right, we will pack the jars. So for every quart jar, I usually put in a teaspoon of salt. I use a plate when I'm packing anything, even jelly, because it's bound to go over the top, and you always have something to catch the juices.
That's very good.
We put 1 or 2 basil leaves down at the bottom for flavor, and I pick a half a tomato, and I usually pack them cut side down. Now, once you have your jar packed, you take your spatula and you press down all around the jar to get the juices flowing, and any air spaces are eliminated. And as you do that, you keep pressing the tomatoes to get a solid pack.
So when you see on the can, solid pack tomatoes, you know what they're talking about. Oh, that looks, see, that's so beautiful. You want to put one more piece of basil in there, or
Yes,
not?
you can. You can fit that in on the side so it shows like that.
Use the classics when you're canning like this. Beef steak or Jersey or the big boys. Those are good high in acid tomatoes.
There.
That looks great. That's really what they call a solid pack.
They're all very good. I add a little juice to bring up the contents to about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch from the top.
Right.
You always leave a little air space so that when the tomatoes process in the water bath, they have some place to expand. All right, if you pack the last one, I'll finish off by putting the tops on.
And you'll need a hot, clean rag. This is very, very important to completely wipe the top of the jar clean.
So you don't have any seeds sitting on top of the lip, which would prevent a seal from forming.
And here are the rings, Mom. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to insert the rack. This is the rack that holds the jars. So Mother is tightening the caps. And the water must be over the top of the lid.
Yeah, about an inch over the jar, then you cover and bring that to a boil and then lower the gas so it simmers.
And
time it for 45 minutes.
45 minutes, so.
And then
okay.
we'll take them out.
Perfect. So we can have a little lunch.
Great,
Want a tomato sandwich?
great.
Well, here, they're ready to come out.
Well, it's wise to remember not to put them in a drafty place. They might crack.
As they cool, you'll hear clink, clink, as the seals contract and pop.
And then you know you have a tight seal. So now I cover them up. After they cool, you can test for a tight seal by removing the ring. And if you can't pry the cap up at all, put the ring back on. And if the cap is loose, you reprocess.
Have you ever had to do that?
Yes.
Oh, you have? Well, it's good to be sure. Well, you can have an instant delicious sauce for pasta, or you can give these beautiful jars as gifts. Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome.
We got an awful lot accomplished today, and guess what? We have
tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow. Well, today we're updating a family classic. Mom's here, and I decided this weekend, Mom, to make delicious macaroni and cheese your way. And the great thing about macaroni and cheese, and everyone around here calls it mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese, really?
And there's so many different ways to make it. We have Macaroni and Cheese 101 from the magazine, which is delicious, rather elaborate. This is a simplified version. And Mom, when I was growing up, used to use bucatini, that nice spaghetti with a hole in it. Used to use leftover spaghetti. You never threw anything away, did you?
Tried not to,
No.
because we had a big family and one income until I went back to work, because everybody was going to college, starting with Eric and then you and Frank and Kathy and George, Laura.
Yeah.
So I had to augment
So we
the
were
income.
thrifty. And it's about a pound of pasta, right?
Right.
For a dish that'll serve, that's 6 very healthy servings, right? I hope this is the same recipe. So it's basically milk. And I don't even think you heated your milk. Did you?
Not really.
Yeah, but I brought it to a boil. It works really well. It's 3 cups of milk, 4 tablespoons of tomato paste. And you always used to use tomato paste, remember? It was always kind of pinkish.
I used tomato soup, too.
Oh, tomato soup.
Right.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember that, so now I'm
That's
remembering.
my mother's style.
Oh, okay.
She used tomato
What,
soup.
a can of tomato soup?
And a can of milk, or a little more milk if necessary. Depending on how much
Oh, well,
pasta.
tomato paste works really well. That's about a
Yes.
half a can of tomato paste.
It'll end up the same way.
And the elbow macaroni cook about 6 or 7 minutes, just until they're done al dente, not real soft, because they're going to cook a little bit more.
Yeah, in the oven.
And then we have grated cheese. We have about 3 or 4 cups of white cheddar. You can
Cheddar
use
and this
the
Swiss cheese.
Yeah, you want to grate some of that?
Surely.
I'm going to use like a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and I'm throwing that right into the milk too. And a lot of black pepper, which I love, like a 1/2 teaspoon. And salt, which I also love, like a teaspoon.
Yeah, why do you love pepper so much?
I don't know why, but I love pepper. I love green pepper, white pepper, black pepper, cherry peppercorns. I like them all. And I just use them in everything all the time. Just bring this to a boil until it gets really hot. Don't let it boil over. The pasta's cooking up nicely. And we're using a very lovely elbow macaroni.
What do you use? Elbow?
So why don't you put half of that in here, and I'll put all the cheddar. So this kind of gets it melted up, you know, like
Yeah, it
almost,
softens it up.
Yeah. So there's no flour, there's no bechamel. You don't have to go through all that difficulty if you don't want to. Great. See, that looks good, and the color's really good, and it's a little bit unusual. So, Mom, I think the pasta is done. I'll drain it. I'm always amazed how much comes from one little box. Beautiful. So we haven't dirtied very many dishes, and this just goes right into your cheesy sauce. So now this is great for Saturday lunch. It's great for Sunday brunch.
I've already
Buttered the pan.
Buttered the pan.
Yeah. So I'll pour that in for you.
Okay.
Doesn't that look good? So it's very moist. And this is going to bake, approximately, what, a half hour?
45 minutes.
45 minutes, okay. Let's sprinkle this all over. So this was grandmother's recipe originally.
What else she used to put on top is breadcrumbs.
So that's like a half a cup of grated Swiss. And then instead of the breadcrumbs, I'm just going to dot this with just a little bit of butter. Yeah, I used to do that. So 375 degrees, 45 minutes, and you'll have a really good dish for the family. And here's one that's already done.
Look at that.
Yeah, it looks great. I like the color. So you wouldn't even know that you didn't use yellow cheese because it's quite pink. So here you have it. So would you want a little taste?
You know what? I always served sour cream with it.
So let's see how it tastes. Be careful, it's hot.
One of my favorite dishes.
Macaroni and cheese. One side dish always on our table, especially around the holidays, was my mother's creamed spinach. And I'm going to share her recipe with you today. Look at this amazing spinach. Look at the size of the leaves. This is what you look for, really beautiful bright green leaves. Very important to wash the leaves and shake out the excess moisture. This is 2.5 pounds of spinach. So just put this right into your deep pot, and you can turn this up to sort of medium. So spinach is very high in vitamin C, E, and K, as well as beta-carotene, folates, riboflavins, and other antioxidants. It should be fresh, crisp. So there, that's 2.5 pounds. See how it compacts itself right down into there? You can cover it. So now, where did the spinach go? It's right here. You can take them out. See how wet they are? Really wet. You can squeeze out extra moisture with the tongs. But if you made a creamed spinach with this wet spinach, it would be too watery. Secret is to make it a little bit drier. There. So, 2 methods. 1 result, drier spinach. So put a little bit in here. This is called a ricer, and it works very well. Just be real careful if the spinach is really hot, not to press too hard, but you have to pour out the top as well as the bottom. So that's one way. Now the other way, and the way my mom did it, was in that damp towel. You squeeze it out. It takes a little bit more work, but it's effective. There. So we now have our semi-dry cooked spinach, and we will make our bechamel. The butter has melted. That's 3 tablespoons of butter, 1/4 cup of flour, and stir that around. So creamed spinach really doesn't have cream in it, unless you add cream, but it's a bechamel, which is a flour-based milky sauce. And now add 1 cup of milk. And I'm making it right in this shallow pan, which is a nice way to cook it because you're going to add the spinach right to the pan. Add 1 teaspoon of sugar. A secret ingredient. Oftentimes, southern cooked vegetables taste so good, and it's generally because they add a little tiny bit of sugar to the vegetables. So there, that's your very nice bechamel, and a little bit of nutmeg. You can use the pre-ground nutmeg out of a can, but it's so much better if you use a real nutmeg. So there, that is your bechamel. Turn that on low, and chop your spinach. 2.5 pounds. Use a sharp, sharp knife or cleaver. And you want a fine texture, but don't put it in a food processor. I think it will only mush it. So this can go right into your pan. It's such a great color. That is good creamed spinach. Season with salt and pepper. Beautiful. So good. And spoon that into your serving dish and serve it hot. And my mom, well, actually, she always served it with a little bit of sour cream on the side. I hope you enjoyed this recipe as much as my whole family did. Welcome to cooking school. Grains are a nutritional staple that for much of the world provides the largest share of calories and nutrients. Our first recipe is a classic mushroom barley soup. My mom's recipe that uses a very flavorful dried mushroom. Then couscous royale, a fantastic recipe using lots of fresh vegetables and served with a spicy condiment called harissa. And finally, a southern favorite, white grits with sharp cheddar cheese served with a unique twist that I think you're going to love. Barley is a hearty grain dating back to the Stone Age, and it's used in dishes from cereals to breads to soups. Today's recipe for mushroom barley soup comes from my mother, who made hers with borowick mushrooms. These are the mushrooms that come from Poland. Women actually wear them around their necks when they're dried. They are worth their weight in gold. And the soup also has a rich beef stock and tender barley. The barley grains have been rinsed well, and we're going to cook them in water, boil them until they're tender. Bring the water to a boil, then reduce to a simmer, and cook the barley for approximately 1 hour until it's plump and not quite split open. These borowicki mushrooms are large, round, ranging from tan to brown, and these are just amazingly flavorful mushrooms. And they are dried very assiduously, and when someone wants to use one, you just soak them in warm water. You can use porcini mushrooms, you can use dried cep. These are sort of like dried cep, and you can also use dried shiitake mushrooms. Borowickis are one of the very few wild mushrooms that may be eaten raw. So by pre-soaking these, they will become plump and tender. Look how different they are. Here's a similar size. Look how they swell. It's very interesting, but very important to soak them overnight so they become tender enough to cut. And my mother used to just slice them, and that's what we're going to do, using them in the soup. Now, to make these even more tender, we are going to cook them for about 40 minutes on a low simmer in the soaking liquid. And then we can start making our soup. To prepare the soup, we're going to add some other mushrooms. These are just white button mushrooms, 6 ounces, that I'm going to cook slowly in 3 tablespoons of butter. These mushrooms will take on a very nice flavor when slowly cooked like this in butter, and we'll also get a nice nutty brown color. I love how these cook down. And the Polish mushrooms that have simmered, look how beautiful they are. They are fantastic. So you just soak these overnight, as I showed you, then simmer for 45 minutes, and then chop or slice, whichever you prefer. So now just slice and dice your mushrooms. Slice them one direction and then the other direction. They actually resemble well-cooked beef liver. They're that kind of texture. They are fragrant and utterly delicious, and they will add a lot of character to this mushroom barley soup. This is 1 ounce of dried Polish mushrooms. And there are some good sources for the dried Polish mushrooms, but remember, they are expensive. So you see how the mushrooms cook down, and they are already taking on a beautiful golden color. Drain your barley, and when I drain into a sink, I turn on my cold water. I just don't like boiling liquid going down the drain in great quantities. I'm not going to rinse the barley, but I am going to rinse the pan out a little bit just so I don't lose any grains. And shake. That is well-cooked barley. You see how the grains are still individual, but they have opened up a little tiny bit. That is exactly what we want with our barley. The mushrooms are almost the right color. You can add a little bit of salt and pepper to your mushrooms. And I find that the longer you cook them, the more they resemble the real Polish dried mushrooms. And have ready 7 cups of beef stock, the reserved liquid from the strained Polish mushrooms. Okay, so the mushrooms I think are beautiful. Add 2 ribs of celery, finely diced. 2 carrots, peeled and finely diced. Let these cook with your browned mushrooms. Add your liquid, Polish mushroom liquid, your beef stock, and now your dried mushrooms. Every single speck. We want this very, very hot, and we're going to add our barley. Now remember that barley releases starch as it cooks, even after it's cooked for an hour, and it will give this soup a little additional body. Now, before I do the last Martha Stewart, my mom's final touches to the soup, I just want to remind you of 2 things. When buying grains, buy them in small quantities, since they go quickly rancid and cause stale aromas and bitterness. And also, when making this particular soup, use a blonde, a light-colored beef stock. Look how pretty all those ingredients look. And they taste really good, too. So now, the final step. 2 tablespoons or 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour into, Mom always used a little bit more sour cream than I thought she should, so this is 3/4 of a cup of sour cream. And the flour gets incorporated into the sour cream. It makes its own little sour cream roux. It's the thickening for the soup. And now use a ladle and put some of the hot broth right into the roux. Adding the flour prevents the sour cream from separating in the soup. It's a very clever thing to do. In Louisiana, you would cook the flour in butter first and add the sour cream at the end. But this is just a simple precautionary step to keep that soup creamy. Okay, so there. Now this goes right back into the soup. And just over low heat, stir in your sour cream. In Polish households, sour cream is just like a staple. We always had sour cream. Nowadays, I have to make a special trip to the grocery store to get the sour cream. It's just not a regular day in, day out ingredient. But look how pretty the soup looks. And Mom insisted that soup be served piping hot and have a bowl of fresh dill fronds, chopped, ready to serve. And here is a soup that is perfect for a chilly day. So
Ready?
there's your apron. And I have the stock already made, that wonderful beef stock, and I've been cutting up everything for you. So when do you remember first making this mushroom soup? Was it from your mother's recipe?
No, it was from Grandma Helen's recipe.
Oh, that's right. Grandma Bokshi, we called her.
Daddy's
mother.
I'll put this in.
Okay, so 5 medium ribs of celery, diced, and 2 large onions, yellow onions, finely diced. And carrots, about 5 carrots. Yeah, here's some more carrot. And you put this into 3 quarts of homemade beef stock. So Grandma Bokshi made this from the time you knew her?
Yeah, 1937 when I was married.
Okay, that was the first time you met her. Here's all the celery. What else did she make that you loved?
Well, she introduced me to the cabbage and potato pierogis.
Oh, so you got those from her too?
Right.
Oh.
Because Grandma Raskowski in Buffalo made what Grandpa liked. He liked cheese pierogi.
So
We're going to drain these mushrooms that have been soaking.
talk about the mushrooms a little bit.
I really don't know the variety, Martha, but they've been famous for hundreds of years.
And they have a thick stem, you can see,
Yeah.
and they have a thin cap, and you cannot imagine how wonderfully they smell. And they're very different from the shiitake mushrooms that we get. And then we're using some dried shiitakes also. Now, are those those are the Polish?
Polish mushrooms that have been
Okay.
soaking overnight.
We got these strings at Kurowicki's, which is on First Avenue in New York City.
This soaking water goes into the stock for the flavor.
Okay. Now, these are the shiitake, which soaked overnight, too.
Okay.
Chop those,
No,
or?
they get chopped.
Okay.
Wait, let me.
I like to chop them in great big pieces. My mother chops them slightly finer, but I don't like to lose them in the soup. And then we have 1 pound of white button mushrooms, which we have to slice up. As a child, I remember always looking in the soup pot for just the Polish mushrooms and picking them out. Not very fair to the other diners, but they were my favorite mushrooms. You always look for those. So, Mom, what would you say? About how long do we have to cook this?
Oh, I'd say maybe about an hour until all the vegetables are tender and done. So we'll just cover it now.
Okay.
Now this is ready to be thickened. The orzo, it can go in now and cook for a minute or so.
Okay.
That'll thicken the soup.
1 cup of orzo. And you want to make a little bit of a roux with the butter and the flour?
All right.
Yeah. So it's 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of flour, cooked. And you must have on hand 1 cup of sour cream. And the soup looks very pretty. It's just chock full of all the most delicious mushrooms and vegetables. Everything is perfectly cooked, but it does need thickening, and that's what the roux does, and the sour cream, and the orzo too.
Now you pour a little of the liquid in here, Martha.
So you just don't want any raw flour taste.
It's like making gravy. Stir it till it's smooth before you add it to the soup. Now we'll pour the flour and broth right in here. And you can put the parsley and the dill in if you wish. Oh, we have to have the sour cream yet
Okay.
for the real full flavor.
2 tablespoons of each, finely chopped.
We have to work this.
So you thin the sour cream a little bit.
There we go, almost finished.
A little bit of pepper. And a little bit of salt.
I think we better taste it to see whether
Okay,
it's,
well,
I don't
I'm
think it needs any more.
Dying to taste it. This is so beautiful. I'm looking for those Polish mushrooms. Oh, here they all are.
I think it's just right.
Exactly. Well, you can make the soup the day before or the day of.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mom, for sharing this really wonderful recipe with us. Rice pudding is a classic comfort food. It's right up there with meatloaf and macaroni and cheese. And today my mother, Martha Stewart, is with me to show us how she makes her version of this very homey dessert. Well, I know it's an easy recipe, but and you used to always use the leftover cooked rice that we had.
It was the fastest for me.
There were 8 of us around the table, and the bowls of rice were quite large, so...
It's a good way to use up leftover white rice.
Yep, it's great.
Okay,
So how many cups of white rice do we need that's cooked?
I think we need about 3 cups.
Okay, so that's 3 cups.
3 cups of whole milk.
So 3 cups of milk. My mother's favorite measuring cups. I always remember you using Pyrex measuring cups when I was a child. And the whole 3 cups of rice.
Right.
And what else?
Sugar. not too much.
That's, I think,
Quarter.
why I loved your rice pudding so
Quarter
much.
cup.
I'll stir for you.
Good. And then we have a quarter teaspoon of salt.
Now, you use whole milk for this, right?
Whole milk.
At home, I remember we always had whole milk. When did you start getting skim milk?
When people started looking at their waistlines. Now, remember when you were very, very little, we used to have a milkman deliver milk.
Oh, I love that
with
milkman.
Cream on top. Well, this
Okay.
gets cooked for about 30 minutes.
Oh, 30 minutes. Oh, okay.
And in the meantime, we could get the eggs separated.
Okay, so why don't you do that? So you should really cook this slowly and stir it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, because the milk. All right, 4 egg yolks. Now you're supposed to put a cup of milk in here.
Oh, so this must be the this must be the last cup. So we're using 4 cups of milk.
A whole quart, and then a teaspoon of vanilla.
It's wonderful. And when do we put the raisins in?
Well, you put the raisins in after we combine the rice and the egg yolks.
So we have a swap out for Mom that's
Okay.
already cooked for 30 minutes, this one. And you'll see how much thicker it is. And this one,
Oh, yeah.
okay. So that's just the rice and the milk. You see it's very, very thick. Okay. So not heavy cream, not half and half. You just use milk.
I suppose you could use half and half if you wanted to, or else 2% milk.
So this looks good.
Yeah, turn it off. We'll add the 3rd cup of raisins.
Okay. Now you used to put golden raisins.
I used to mix them too.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter really. And a little cinnamon. We can put that into the baking dish.
Okay, so why don't you
and
beat up the
I'll
egg whites?
Beat the egg whites.
My mother always used a hand egg beater, never electric. But when we got that KitchenAid, remember when Dad bought you your first KitchenAid? How happy you were?
Yeah, we had a ball with it.
We had every attachment known to KitchenAid when we had that beautiful K45, and I still have my mother's original K45. You know that, right? Mm-hmm. Here, I'll do that for you. Here, I'll do the sugar.
We'll need
That's it. It's measured.
half a cup of sugar.
Yeah.
Cream of tartar too.
How much?
About quarter of a teaspoon.
And a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Does that look good enough?
Oh, yeah.
Very soft peaks.
Now you can spread this on with a rubber scraper and into the oven.
For how long?
Maybe about 5 minutes.
Well, look, Mom, tell me if it's okay.
Oh, I think it's wonderful.
You like it? Mm-hmm. Good. I'll take it out. Oh, looks great. Here.
Nice.
Well, now, should I dig into it right now?
I don't think you should let it cool.
Oh, okay. It looks really great, and I can't wait to dig in.
Neither can I.
Well, whatever way you choose to make your rice pudding, it is comforting, it's delicious, and it's really nice treat for your family. Thanks, Mom.
You're very welcome. Enjoy.
This is my mother, Big Martha, she's called in our family, but I've grown taller than she. Promised that if I brought her a few extra kielbasa from that wonderful store, Kurowitzki's, she would come and show us how she cooks and serves kielbasa, along with some very delicious specialties. So, Mom, I put the kielbasa in these big pans to boil them for about 20 minutes.
Well, yes, you can parboil them 15 or 20 minutes, and then we bake them in the oven until they're nicely browned.
Yep, so this one is just about ready to put into a roasting pan.
You want this?
I like one in a pan, and I always poke it. Well, this way I find that it doesn't crack on me.
Mm-hmm. Put a little bit of the hot water just to create steam.
And keep
That's enough.
keep it
That's
tender.
enough.
Okay, so it's like a half an inch of water.
Mm-hmm.
And then these just go into what, a 350 oven?
That's right.
Okay. Well, here's the kielbasa. This is cooked for now 20 minutes in the oven, and it looks exactly how it's supposed to be. This is our favorite rye bread. Where'd you get this from?
Gold's Deli in Westport.
Oh, I love their breads. They get their
They have
breads.
the real Jewish rye.
And I'm making this quite thin.
Now,
And you
can I show you this kielbasa, how
It is so good.
juicy?
So my mother likes to make big, thick chunks of it because that's the way we've always eaten it.
It's hot.
It is hot. So there's our lovely sausage. Why don't you show the horseradish, because this is kind of interesting.
This is horseradish as it comes out of the ground. It's a root vegetable. Of course, you don't eat it as a vegetable because it's much, much too hot and spicy.
And Mom used to send me out to the backyard
To grate it.
grate it.
But I learned that I could do it in the kitchen in an electric machine, but it would have to be done in front of that exhaust fan. Now, this is grated horseradish here, and you mix it with a little white vinegar. And a little sugar.
And if you don't want to go through all this trouble,
You can buy the prepared horseradish.
if you want to put some of the prepared horseradishes in these bowls. Now get ready to cry, because this is about the right size grater for the fresh horseradish. And these are beautiful.
Pickled beets.
Yes, we had so many beets left over that we decided to pickle our own, and these are great. They're
Here,
a
let me
little
hold
bit
the-
spicy. There, so now we have pickled beets. You will love these. And look, Mom, a block of homemade sweet butter.
That's an unexpected pleasure.
Yes, it's really good.
It's a treat.
And you have eggs, you have butter, you have beets, you have kielbasa, and you have rye bread. And what else could you ask for? Well, it may have been Dad that took me to Kurlitzky's in the first place.
It was.
But it was certainly Mom who taught me how to cook and serve one of our favorite Easter foods, kielbasa.
Thank you.
Mom, on Mother's Day, didn't we always have angel food cake?
More or less.
You never bought angel food cakes, even though there were angel food cakes at the Nutley Co-op, because I remember them there.
Really?
And I used to ask Mom to buy one. She said, nope, we'll make one.
Well, at first, there weren't too many cake mixes around, as I remember. But then I always liked to make everything from scratch.
Mom's sifting the flour. It's cake flour, and you have to sift it 4 times. You have to really get it light and airy. And I'm starting to beat 12 egg whites until they just break up, and then I'm going to start adding the other ingredients. We need a half a teaspoon of salt in the egg whites, and 1.5 teaspoons of cream of tartar. That'll get the egg whites to improve in stability and increased volume. So I'm adding the sugar, 1 3/4 cups of granulated sugar, very slowly. We have to get these light and fluffy, but not dry, right? Okay, so this is getting nice and fluffy.
It has to beat for a while until it is fluffy. Otherwise, it won't hold up in the oven.
And we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract and a half a teaspoon of almond extract.
Now, the sugar is in. Everything is in but the flour.
Right. Fold in the flour just a little bit at a time. Some people use their hand to do the folding. Oh, this is folding in beautifully. What a great mixture this is.
Very simple, very delicious.
Preheat your oven to 275 degrees because it's going to cook for 30 minutes. Then increase the temperature to 325 degrees and bake for 30 minutes more. So notice I'm trying not to deflate the egg whites. And guess who taught me how to fold?
Who?
You.
I thought you'd say that.
You taught me. It's a very dry, meringue kind of texture. And now we can put that into the pan. You want to do that? I'll check the oven temperature.
You don't grease the pan.
Oh, no greasing the pan.
Otherwise, it wouldn't stick to the sides and grow.
Real important to incorporate that flour so that you don't have any dry spots. And another thing you taught me to do is to really scrape the bowl. You never let us waste anything. We scraped every single bit. Don't you remember saying that?
Oh, I know.
And then, of course, if there was anything left in the bowl, we actually got to lick the bowl. I love the texture of this cake. Just cut through like this to release any air bubbles. That way you're not going to have holes in your cake. Well, this looks very good.
Looks good enough to eat right now.
No. Now these cakes are peculiar in that when they come out of the oven, and you would never do this to another kind of cake, you invert the cake on top of something, and it's usually a beer bottle or a wine bottle like this. This cake has been inverted for at least 1 hour before you remove the pan. And look how nice and high and beautiful this cake is. You're going to have to release the cake, stay right next to the edge of the pan.
And then around the tube part.
Right. So this looks like it's going to come undone. We hope, we hope.
I think
And you can invert this right on
well, there it
cake
goes.
pedestal. Yes, there it is. And that's exactly what it should look like. If you don't want to see that little bit of roughness on the top, you can dust it with powdered sugar. It looks really pretty. Don't you think that'd be pretty? And you can cut it with one of these. This works very nicely. You can't really cut it with a knife because it will squash the cake.
Yeah, right.
So you have to use one of these special angel food cake cutters, and it kind of breaks the cake. You know how you're always told not to cut an English muffin? Well, the same thing with an angel food cake. Never cut, always kind of tear it. So another favorite way is, if you don't have one of these, is to use 2 forks and gently pull the cake apart. But you see how perfectly imperfect it is? That's the sign of a well-made, homemade angel food cake. And we have some lightly macerated strawberries. These are the very nicest early strawberries. And you would just spoon on your strawberries, a little piece of
Mint.
perfectly fresh mint. And you have Mother's Day,
Dessert.
Easter, birthday party,
Thank
anything. Well, enjoy that, Mom. So once you've mastered the art of yeast dough, you can make all kinds of things. As you've seen, you can make sugar buns and sticky buns, but you can also make some really delicious babkas and fruit-filled coffee cakes. And today we're doing a yeasted coffee cake that my mom would, oh gosh, she would love. She would love to have it with her morning coffee. It is full of fruit and nuts and a few lovely crumbs on top. And I'm going to make the filling first because it includes 1 cup of almonds. These are slivered toasted almonds. Let's just add a whole cup here. And 1 cup of golden raisins. And 1 cup of dark raisins. A zest of 2 oranges. Zest of 2 lemons. So it's very citrusy, it's very nice. And now 1 teaspoon plus a half of vanilla and 2 tablespoons of an orange liqueur. I love orange liqueur. Half a cup of sugar. So mix this all up and you will have your beautiful fruit filling for the coffee cake. So that is the fruit filling for the yeasted coffee cake. And now for the crumbs, 3 tablespoons of butter, softened. We're going to make this a gluten-free recipe. The dough is made with gluten-free flour, and so is the crumb topping. 1/4 cup of gluten-free flour, and 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of confectioner's sugar. And mix that up. If the butter is soft at room temperature, it makes a really nice crumb. Simple recipe for crumbs, very reminiscent of a New York coffee cake too. Now, we have to roll out our dough. Here's the dough. It's doubled in bulk. And we want to roll this out to 18 by 18 inches square. It's a very nice dough, and it rolls out very easily. And that's the sign of a good dough, that you can pick it up and flip it over, and it doesn't tear and break and fall apart. So now we spread our fruit filling, reserving about a half a cup, and leave about an inch all the way around. So now we're going to egg wash the border with 1 large egg and a tablespoon of heavy cream. This is acting as a glue and will help seal in the fruit. So we roll this up. See how nicely it's rolling? The egg really does act like glue. Now spread this out a little bit, fold it in half, and twist it over itself, like that, and like that. The pan has been buttered, lined with 1 piece of parchment paper with flaps. This will enable you to lift the cake out of the pan and keeping the top. Otherwise, you'd have to invert it, and you might lose a lot of the crumbs and a lot of the fruit. So put this right in here. And now egg wash the entire surface. This will help brown the cake, and it will also help the crumbs adhere to the cake. Sprinkle the rest of the fruit on top. And now the crumbs. And I love crumbs. They're so good. So now cover this with a piece of plastic wrap. Put it in a warm but not overly hot spot. I like the top of my oven. It works really well. And for about an hour until it's about doubled in volume. So now our bread is risen, our yeasted coffee cake, and it looks really pretty, don't you think? Now you can test, just press, and it pops back up. That's a well-risen cake. So now get this right into your 375-degree preheated oven for about 50 minutes, and then reduce the heat to 325 for another 20 minutes or so. So here's our cake. It's been out of the oven for a little bit more than an hour. Don't cut it when it comes right out of the oven. It's a little too hot and a little too moist. It has to settle down a little bit. But eating it fresh is really good. And actually tomorrow, it's very good too. So, and it never lasts till tomorrow in my house. This is great with morning coffee. It's lovely in the afternoon with tea. And boy, is that gorgeous. Look at that yellow, yeasty dough. And just full of beautiful, beautiful fruit. That is a great looking coffee cake. And remarkably gluten-free. It's our baking bonus for today. Enjoy. Mother, do you remember making stuffed peppers when I was growing up?
Yes, I do, but you know, I always made them with meat and rice. This is a treat for me, too.
This is my adaptation. I'm cooking 1 cup of rice in 2 cups of water. Mom is cutting off the tops of the peppers, and I like to have the tops like that so that you can put them on while they cook. And what I'm doing here is finding a dish that's just the right size and 1 extra pepper to cut up, because it's nice to have a little bit of the pepper in the filling. And now, if you just core the tomatoes and squeeze the seeds out, I don't even peel them. And then we'll use that in the bottom of the dish. And now to make the filling, I'm just going to melt about 4 tablespoons of butter. You can use a little oil if you like, and saute some white onion, just a small white onion. Some shallots are really nice too. 2 large shallots, finely minced, and get that cooking up. And our raisins, it's so delicious if you plump the raisins in fresh orange juice in about a half a cup. So the peppers are all done?
Yep.
Good. And this is Alexis's favorite thing.
Well, yeah, she's a vegetarian, isn't she?
Right, so no turkey for her. So some salt and pepper. She had turkey when she was little.
Yeah, when she was little, she had everything.
And get that cooking, and now you can add your cut up yellow bell pepper. Now, you always made green peppers, because we didn't really have yellow peppers or orange peppers when I was growing up.
No, we didn't.
No, there were green peppers and sometimes a red pepper. So I'm going to add our raisins
Oh, the orange juice.
and let the raisins plump up a little bit. And the secret of this dish really is all the wonderful fresh herbs that you would use. Now, salt and pepper your tomatoes, because that's the base. We will then add chervil and
Oh, yeah.
basil. Would you like to do that?
Surely.
So you can just julienne that if you like, or chiffonade it. And a lot of chervil. This is out of the garden. Isn't it beautiful? Quite fine. It's better if it's a little fine. And then some thyme. And I'm just breaking the leaves of thyme. Doesn't it smell great?
It's wonderful.
And then another thing you could do if you like fresh herbs, you can just put the stems on your tomatoes
I see.
too. Yeah, this is a very rustic dish, the way I make it.
I never had it quite this way.
Just throw that right in here, Mom. See, a lot of it is so pretty. And then another thing I add is pinoli nuts. Toasted pinolis,
Oh,
aren't
the
they pretty?
pine nuts, yeah,
Yes, the
they-
little pine nuts. And then a little bit of
Right?
rice. And now this rice is a little underdone, which is nice because they're going to
It'll
cook
cook right
for
away.
quite a while.
Looks good.
Yep. There. And so we can stuff the peppers. Actually, it's going to start cooking the peppers immediately. All of these stuffed dishes, like the stuffed cabbage, the stuffed peppers that my mom talks about, are the dishes that really came from Grandma.
Oops.
Grandma Roskowski, Grandma Kostira. It's from our
Oh, yeah,
Polish background.
That was real comfort food.
And if you want, you can just even add a few more sprigs of fresh herbs to the peppers. And now, can we find which tops belong to which? I don't know about that. This one goes to this one, I think. So it's a good idea to put that on the baking sheet and never put aluminum foil straight on your vegetables because you'll find that it's very corrosive. So put a piece of parchment paper first. Like
And you
this.
don't add any water then?
You don't have to. You don't have to add any water.
Tomatoes
Because
will.
they're very juicy. Yeah, the tomatoes kind of give the moisture that you need. And this can go
Into the oven?
right into a 350-degree oven and bake until the peppers are really tender. It takes about an hour. Good. Very nice. And now we have some already done, and I'll show you what they look like.
Oh,
About 10 minutes before they're done. Did you close the oven, Mom?
yes.
Thank you. Take the wrapping off and let the tops get just a little bit brown.
Take the filling first.
Good?
Just the right amount of sweetness and tartness.
Yep, I think that's what the raisins do.
Yes, and the orange juice.
Yeah. Well, it's really nice when you can teach your mother something new.
Thank you for the lesson.
Potato pierogi, which is my mom's recipe, Big Martha. And I just want to make sure that I get the dough right, because if the dough's not right, the pierogis won't be right. So break one egg into a big bowl. One beautiful fresh egg from the chickens outside. And so break that up, add 1 teaspoon of salt. I always like to add that to the egg. Do that. And then your 2 tablespoons of sour cream. I confess I didn't have any sour cream in this COVID crisis. I didn't get to the store today, so I'm using creme fraiche, which is sort of a little richer, a little delicious. So mix that together with 1 cup of milk. Get that all mixed in. So wet ingredients first, basically. It's just making a soft, beautiful, malleable dough that will encase the fillings. And I made a potato filling, same filling that my mom, Big Martha, would make. Steamed potatoes or boiled potatoes, peeled, mashed with a lot of butter, salt, and pepper. And my mom always added cream cheese, but I didn't have any cream cheese, so I didn't add any cream cheese, but really good. And then this is a mixture of old white cabbage. When I say old, it's like a dried out head of cabbage
that I had, and I made this. It was in the freezer. You steam the cabbage, you squeeze as much water out of it as you can, and you mix that with cream cheese, salt, and pepper. Boy, is that good. Wait till you taste those. Now that's all nicely mixed, and add 1 cup of water. So that's your liquid for your dough. And now, don't use this to incorporate the flour because it'll get all gummed up. So use about 4.5 cups of flour. And this is, I already pre-measured. So I'll just add a little bit at a time. And my mom always used a wooden spoon to stir. I don't know why, but that's what she used. No mixers, no nothing, no whisks, a wooden spoon. And just keep adding your flour. I'll use this little bowl to dump it in. And I'm using Hecker's unbleached white flour, which is my favorite flour for all purpose. And I just like Hecker's, I don't know why. King Arthur's a good substitute for Hecker's if you can't find Hecker's. Let's see, this looks really wet. Oy, oy, oy. It's very wet. That must be at 2 cups of liquid. So I'm gonna just dump in the whole 4.5 cups. What you want is a soft, lovely dough. Oh look, it's coming together nicely. It's not exactly a ravioli dough, but you know, every single country has a dumpling of some sort or other. Empanadas, pierogis, pierogies, raviolis. What do the French have? Do the French have a dumpling? I don't know about that. But they have their crepes that they wrap around things. So this dough is coming together very nicely. Yeah, it looks just like my mom's. I'm reminding myself of my mom. You know, the Polish heritage runs strong and deep. But pierogis are our favorite holiday food. We love pierogis. Now it's good to let this rest, but since I am on a sort of a time bind here, I'm going to try to do this without resting it too much. I should roll up my sleeves. I'm covered with all kinds of bruises and sores. I got bitten by one of my geese. I got poked by one of the rose bushes that I was trying to prune. You know, during this time, we're spending a lot of time outside, as much time as I possibly can, because I like being outside. And I can't go anywhere else, so I might as well just go outside. So scrape. You might have to add a little bit more flour. I didn't add the whole extra. This calls for 4.5 to 5 cups. And it's kind of wet outside today. This is my kitchen. I love my kitchen. It has lots of copper pots. It has a cappuccino machine center over there where people come for their cappuccino. And it has a big wall of ranges. This is all jade ranges, which are so phenomenal. I love them. And I have Miele dishwashers, and I have Charleston refrigerators, a whole bank of refrigerators over there. So it's a semi-professional home kitchen. But you know, all I'm doing all day long now is cooking, cooking, cooking. And I have 3 people staying with me during this time. I've basically locked them in my house, and they're really helping me a lot. Ryan is holding the camera. He's my gardener. And Carlos, my driver, he has been taking care of the animals with me and really helping out a lot. See how I'm kneading? See how nice it's coming together? Such a good dough. You want an elastic dough that's not wet and that can be rolled out and formed into dumplings. And my favorite pierogis, let's see, cabbage first, potato second, sour cherry, fresh sour cherry, so good. Oh, and another one that is so good are the little sour Italian plums. I take the pit out and put a little sugar where the pit goes, and encase that in this dough and serve it with melted butter. Oh, it's brown butter, it's so good. But it's coming along here. What do you say? Now it's supposed to rest while you create the fillings, but since the fillings are already created, I got smart and I made those ahead of time so it wouldn't take up all day. So now we're going to let this dough just sit like that. Now I'm going to show you a secret. This is a secret, but I'm going to just cut part of this dough and put a little flour on the board. This is called bench flour because it's on the bench. Put your dough like this, and you don't want it to dry out, whatever you do. So, the secret is put a bowl over it. That way it can't possibly dry out. You see how nicely this is rolling out? And that is a little elastic is good because you'll see I'm going to stretch it as I fill the pierogi. Oh, my dogs are watching. Can you get a picture of Bête Noire down there? Look at Bête Noire. She's looking, thinking I might be making something with meat. Sorry, Bête Noire. This is a vegetarian dumpling fest that we're having here. I'm using my favorite rolling pin, which I got in Paris on my honeymoon. It's such a beautiful rolling pin. Only good thing about my honeymoon was this rolling pin. Okay, so make sure it's not sticking. That's the one thing, you don't want it sticking, so you can lift it up like that, and it's not sticking. And it's just doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Thank heavens. So then, using a cutter of about 2.5 or 3 inches, Mom always used one of those aluminum cold drink glasses. I don't know if you remember those. They came in hideous colors like bright red and bright blue and bright electric green. That's what she used to cut the dough like this. And now, to form the pierogi, I am going to first get my cookie sheet out. I use one of these flour sack towels, see this? And you put that over here, and you dust it with a little bit of flour. You can also use cornmeal, because that's what you're going to put your made dumpling on now. I'll do the potato first. So you hold it in your hand like this. See how nice this dough doesn't break? It doesn't do anything bad. And then a nice amount of potato. Mound it like this. And then pull the dough up until it touches like that. Look at that cute little dumpling. Now I like to secure the dough by doing a second little pinch like that. You do not want them falling apart when you boil them. And these are boiled first, and then you can do whatever else you want with them. But there, that's a nice plump pierogi. Pretty, right? I rolled out my second batch of dough, and now I'm making the cabbage pierogi, my favorite of all. And as I said, it's just fresh cabbage that's old though. It's dried. They turn white when they really get old. And you steam them, squeeze out all the filling, and you usually use like a baby diaper, clean baby diaper, or a flour sack towel like that, and squeeze out all the excess liquid, and then chop it. I do it in Cuisinart, but we used to put it through a meat grinder at home when I was growing up. And that's the filling. It's extremely tasty. And lots of black pepper, lots of cream cheese, and lots of salt. You may not like the sound of it, but I guarantee you would like it to taste it, because it's something very special. And when you're making pierogies, either you talk to somebody like Babci Ed, my grandma, would sit at the end of the table and she'd be making pierogies. She made them faster than anybody. And that was Babci Ed. Babci is another word for, I think, aunt. Babci, or grandma, maybe it's grandma. And then we had Vucci Joe. He would come and visit. He was a butcher. And so my humble beginnings just remain a very fond memory and a very important part of my life, all of this. The most I ever ate in one sitting was 21 of these. I think I had a stomachache afterward, but 21 went down very easily because they are really delicious. Okay, so I'll be back to show you how to boil the pierogi, and hopefully they will not fall apart, and I'll show you how I serve them with browned butter. Yummy. As you take them out, just get off the excess water and then gently put them into your buttered dish. You don't want that water on your serving platter. So you can see that's a potato, that's a cabbage. You can see the difference in color. Boy, do these look good. They look better than any place in Chicago. Forgive me, Kasha's. Better than almost, they look almost as good as my mom's. See, just put the butter on. You're not going to eat all this butter, but it keeps the pierogi from sticking to each other. There. And now I have to make a few more, and then we're ready for dinner.
I would describe my mother as
happy and caring,
a fun-loving ball of energy.
eccentric.
As a discoverer.
I would describe my mom as a ray of sunshine.
my mother taught me a lot.
The value of hard work.
Cook like a champ.
All that I know about hosting a party.
That it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
How to be there for people when they really need you to be there.
About the kitchen, about cooking, about sewing, about homekeeping.
There should be a day to celebrate moms because it's the hardest job in the world.
They spend 364 days of the year worrying about us, so why can't we just take one day to worry about them?
I love my mom because she is a great example of the type of woman that I want to be.
My mom is beautiful and amazing.
I love my mom because she's the best.
She really made me the woman I am today, and I think that's pretty awesome.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.